Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Invicta Pro Diver 9094 OB. This watch is available from Amazon.ie for €99. The watch is clearly an homage to the Rolex Submariner date 16610. I previously reviewed the black version of the Pro Diver, which is the reference 8926 OB, and I compared it side by side with my Rolex Submariner date 16610, which it is an homage to. So this blue version of the Pro Diver reference 9094 OB has exactly the same specification as the black version 8926 OB. The only differences are the dial and also the bezel. So this version has a blue sunburst dial and a blue bezel, and the black version has a glossy black dial and black bezel. But other than that, the specifications are identical, the dimensions are also identical. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in this yellow cardboard Invicta branded watch box. Now I'm going to be critical of this because early versions of the Invicta Pro Diver came in a vinyl plastic watch box, and the interior of the early version watch boxes were fully upholstered with a yellow velour fabric on the underside of the hinge lid, and also the base was fully upholstered with yellow velour fabric to a good standard. Also, the watch sat on a padded pillow cushion which was Rolex style and fully upholstered with yellow velour fabric to a good standard. This one just sits on this profiled piece of foam, which is a clear cross-cutting measure, and the use of a cardboard watch box rather than a plastic vinyl coated watch box which is upholstered with velour fabric is a clear production cost-cutting measure by Invicta in order to maximise profit margin per piece. So this is a downgrade, and it's disappointing because the retail price has not been reduced despite using a cardboard watch box versus a more expensive vinyl coated watch box. And I think this is a downgrade, and it's production cost cutting measure too far. It is basic and it does suffice in protecting the watch in shipping from any damage, but I prefer the original Pro Diver plastic vinyl coated watch box. With regards to items that come with the piece, this is the warranty card. Now, the standard Pro Diver warranty is 2 years, but however, if you register your watch at www.invictawarranty.com, that will add an additional 1 year of warranty, so that will extend the 2-year standard warranty to 3 years. To get 3 years of international warranty on a Pro Diver at this price point of €99 is exceptional. Often low-tier brands only cover their watches with a 12-month international warranty, so to get 3 years is exceptional, and Invicta deserve full credit for that, so it is excellent. Now, there is no owner's instruction manual in the form of a printed booklet, but as an alternative to that, there is a QR code on the warranty card on the left, as you can see. So you can scan the QR code with your Android or iPhone, and that will download the owner's instruction manual. Clear, concise diagrams, the instructions are in English, and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the Seiko Caliber NH35A automatic, which is made in Malaysia. And lastly, one also gets this plastic tag which has the Invicta winged logo, Invicta text logo, and on the reverse it has a QR code which you can scan to download the owner's instruction manual as an alternative to scanning the QR code on the warranty card that I just showed you. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 40mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 47.8mm, a thickness of 14.3mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The oyster-style bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 18mm at the flip-lock clasp. Now I think they've made a mistake here with regards to the proportions of the oyster-style bracelet. 20:16 is perfection personified. I often refer to it in my reviews. That is the taper used on my Rolex Submariner date 16610, and 20:16 is the industry standard for good reason, because it perfectly balances a 40mm head of the piece, and it also looks very aesthetically pleasing. 20:18 isn't as popular. 22:18 is the other alternative industry standard for larger 41 and 42mm heads of pieces. 20:18 is less popular because, as you can see, the oyster style bracelet has a straight profile to it. It's a very slight taper, only 2mm across the length. 20:16 is more aggressive and therefore more aesthetically pleasing, so that's something to note. So the flip lock clasp is solid 316L grade stainless steel, but it's a very light gauge of pressed stainless steel. I'd like to see Invicta upgrade this to a solid milled body and also lengthen the clasp. Now, on a positive note, we do have 4 micro adjustments in the flanks, which is adequate in the absence of half links on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side of the oyster style bracelet. So 4 micro adjustments does give adequate adjustment without half links, but they could further enhance this with a ratcheting mechanism, or alternatively half links on the 6 and the 12 o'clock sides, because sometimes adding or subtracting one full oyster style link from a bracelet doesn't give the desired fit. The bracelet feels slightly too tight or too loose. So by having half links, one can centralise the clasp and also get the perfect fit, because adding or subtracting a half link gives a better fit than just a full link. On a positive note, it has a beautiful lustre to the body, and it's engraved with the Invicta winged logo and also Invicta text logo to a good standard, and flawless mirror polishing to the flanks, and it's been deburred and chamfered very well, doesn't have sharp corners, and there's no sharp edge to the top edge or the lower edge. The flanks are also deburred on the undercuts, so it does feel comfortable despite being low quality, because it is a very lightweight, light gauge pressed stainless steel clasp. We have a flat mineral crystal. Now, the negative is there is no AR coating on the underside. And when I tilt the piece at an oblique angle, you can see the lack of AR coating is noticeable. It's highly reflective like a mirror. This piece would really benefit from sapphire crystal with AR coating on the underside. The negative of mineral crystal is it's not as hard and scratch resistant as sapphire crystal. It's a clear cost cutting measure by Invicta in order to maximise profit margin per piece. And really, it's a cost cutting measure too far, because the production cost of increasing the specification to sapphire crystal versus mineral is marginal. It really is finite. So it's not going to diminish their profit margin per piece much by upgrading to sapphire crystal with AR coating. They just simply do it because mineral crystal is very inexpensive. And as you can see, it really does need it, because the silver mirror polished Mercedes handset and silver mirror polished applied indices are highly reflective, as is the metallic sunburst dial. Now, the sunburst dial is very aesthetically pleasing because it changes colour from an electric blue to a navy blue depending on the light condition, but it is very shiny, and as you can see, this really does need AR coating because it is highly reflective. When you view it at an oblique angle, there is a lot of glare. It's just like a mirror, and the legibility of the dial and handset is poor. It's diminished as a result. We have a sapphire crystal mineral crystal with mineral Cyclops magnifier. Now again, this is a cost-cutting measure because it's not a sapphire crystal Cyclops magnifier. The negative is it's only 1.5 times magnification, which has a negligible magnification effect. Just bear with me, I'll move the pencil minute hand out of the way of it so you'll be able to see the date complication better. Now, Rolex on the Submariner Dates 16610 has a 2.5 times magnification, which is optimum. It's industry standard for good reason, because 2.5 times magnification of the date window really does have excellent performance. But 1.5 times really is negligible. It doesn't really enhance the legibility and the clarity of the date complication. On a positive note, the date framing is correct. So the date window is large enough. The Arabic numerals, both the singles and the doubles on the white date wheel, are printed with high definition crisp font. So the font isn't too thick and blurry. The legibility of the singles and the doubles is good, despite only 1.5 times magnification. Also, there's no AR coating on the underside of the Cyclops magnifier. Again, this would really benefit from a sapphire crystal Cyclops magnifier with AR coating on the underside. That would reduce the glare, because when you tilt it at an oblique angle, you also get the reflection on the underside of the mineral crystal and also the Cyclops magnifier. So the legibility is poor as a result. But the alignment is correct. The single and the double Arabic numerals aren't too far to the left or the right of the date window, and they're not too high or too low, so that's good. I like the dial layout. Now, it has a nipple dial, which is like the early versions of the 16610 rather than the maxi dial, which is used on later versions of the 16610 and the current Submariner date, but it does give the piece a vintage aesthetic. The Mercedes handsets are correctly proportioned, so the Mercedes hour hand is large enough, and the pencil minute hand extends all the way to the minute ticks on the chapter ring, so that's good. Also, the second hand is long enough to extend all the way to the minute ticks on the chapter ring, which is good, and it has a counterbalance which matches the Invicta winged logo. This is subjective. Some collectors dislike the winged logo counterbalance. They would prefer if it didn't have it. I think it's okay. I like these silver minute ticks rather than just using white paint, and that matches the silver text on the dial. I think more brands should do this, because the default option is to print the text and the minute ticks on the chapter ring in white paint, because it contrasts very well with a blue sunburst dial. But Invicta on the Pro Diver use silver paint for the text on the dial and also the minute ticks on the chaptering, and the legibility is good, and it's also very nice because it complements the silver applied Invicta wing logo at 12 and the silver applied Invicta text logo. So I like the silver text, I like the silver minute ticks on the chaptering. The one negative of this piece I want you to be aware of is it does have a deep brushed satin finish Rehaut. Now this is a characteristic of many low tier Chinese made watches. They have a very deep Rehaut when they use the Seiko NH35A. It is necessary because the cannon pinion stack height of the hands is tall on the NH35A, so therefore one does need additional clearance beneath the crystal to the second hand, because otherwise the second hand would foul the underside of the sapphire crystal. So the deep Rehaut is necessary. The dial needs to be deep away from the sapphire crystal in order to give enough hand stack height on the cannon pinion. But however, it doesn't need to be this deep, because I have reviewed other NH35A powered pieces such as the Suges Submariner Data Marge, and that does have a very shallow Rehaut, as one would expect with a Miyota 9015 or an SW200-1 powered piece. It does have that nice slender low profile Rehaut as per Rolex Submariner Date 16610. So this does have a deep Rehaut, but I'm pleased that they brushed satin finished it rather than mirror polished it, so it's not like a 360 degree mirror. The benefit of brushed satin finishing it is it refracts the light rather than reflecting it like a mirror. So with a mirror polished Rehaut, when the light enters the mineral crystal, it then gets bounced around the mirror polished Rehaut like a mirror, and that creates reflection, it creates glare, and it reduces the legibility. But by having a brushed satin finish Rehaut in stainless steel, that refracts the light rather than reflecting it, so it's better. Looks very aesthetically pleasing, but it would look more aesthetically pleasing if it had a shallower Rehaut. But however, that's to be expected with an NH35A powered piece. With regards to bezel, it's solid 316L grade stainless steel, scalloped as per the Rolex Submariner Date 16610, which this is a homage to, and mirror polished, so nice large chamfer to the top edge, and that deletes the sharp tips of the scalloped teeth. And it's got an aluminium bezel insert which is anodized blue, very aesthetically pleasing blue tone. It's like an electric blue or royal blue, and that complements the blue sunburst style, because the sunburst style changes from an electric blue to a royal blue as per the royal blue anodized bezel. I like the use of an anodized bezel, which is aluminium, versus a ceramic bezel. Now, subjectively, one could be critical and say, well, aluminium bezel inserts are not as hard and scratch resistant as ceramic or sapphire crystal bezel inserts, so why don't Invicta use it? Well, this is an homage to the 16610, albeit a blue version of it, but it gives it a vintage aesthetic. If they used a ceramic bezel insert, yes, it would be more scratch resistant, but it wouldn't look like an homage to the 16610, because the 16610 used an aluminium bezel insert, not ceramic. I like it. So I like the metallic silver minute ticks in the first quarter, and also like the silver Arabic numerals and hour markers. It's very aesthetically pleasing. I like the reflective metallic finish to it, and it complements the metallic sunburst style. Blue tone of it is absolutely beautiful. It's a very aesthetically pleasing bezel. With regards to the case, it's solid 316L grade stainless steel. Has a grain satin finish to the tops of the lugs. Now, it does look coarse, but I'm not going to be critical of it, because the Rolex Submariner Date 16610 also has coarse brushed satin finishing to the tops of the lugs. And they've done a very good job of it, because it does replicate or look similar to the Rolex finishing on the 16610 case. It does have that coarse grain satin finishing to it rather than fine grain satin finishing. So to contrast or to compare, if you look at the bracelet outer links, they have a fine grained satin finish to the outer links, and that's normally the case with the tops of the lugs. On Submariner Data Marges, they also have a brushed satin finish which is fine grained, but on this Pro Diver it's more coarse. So it does look rougher, but it actually looks closer to a 16610 in terms of finishing. I like it. Now, that contrasts with a flawless mirror polishing to the flanks. Subjectively, one could be critical of the branding of the Invicta text logo on the left-hand flank. It's divisive. Some collectors like it, some collectors dislike it. I personally don't mind it on the left-hand flank, but of course, it would look cleaner if it didn't have it. I think it's subjective. It really comes down to your personal preference, but the quality of the engraving is good. It's crisp, it's sharp, but doesn't feel rough. So they've done a good job of deburring it, so it is high quality, high definition engraving. So let's look at the end links and bracelet in detail. So this uses hollow folded stainless steel end links. Now one could be critical of this because the industry standard now in 2025 is solid end links in an oyster style bracelet. But however, subjectively one could say, well, this is an homage to the 16610. Early versions of the Submariner Date 16610 did use the same hollow folded end links, and then later versions Rolex updated to solid end links, which is now the industry standard. But the early versions did have similar folded hollow end links, and one could say, well, it is an accurate homage to it. But the end link articulates freely, it doesn't feel stiff or kink, so that's the benefit. But the negative is it's sloppy. Lateral, side to side, longitudinal, up and down play in every single direction, and it rattles. So I'd like to see Invicta upgrade this to solid end links and also tighten up the tolerances. This is simply due to the spring bar being undersized in the hole, which is too large. They simply need to use smaller holes in the end link and also the folded end link and a thicker spring bar, and that would tighten up the tolerances and make it an interference friction fit. But on a positive note, it does articulate freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, but it does rattle, so that's something to be aware of. Now in terms of the finishing to the bracelet, flawless mirror polishing to the centre links and beautiful lustre to the outer links. So they've done a very good job of finishing the oyster style bracelet. No sharp edges to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks. So it doesn't feel sharp, doesn't scratch the wrist, which is good. The mirror polishing to the flanks is done to a flawless standard. So the quality of the finishing is excellent to the top side, underside and flanks. However, there is the cost cutting measure of push pins in the bracelets. I would like to see Invicta upgrade this to using 1.6mm screw pins, because it is possible at this price point, €99, to have screw pins. Other brands are doing it. For example, Pagani Design with a PD1661, similar price point piece, uses screw pins in the oyster style bracelet. And really that would help, because the negative is it's sloppy. Longitudinal, lateral, side to side, up and down play in the push pins, and they can't tighten up the tolerances because it uses push pins. Had they used screw pins, that would tighten it up, and it rattles on wrist, so that's the negative. Now on a positive note, it does articulate freely, so it doesn't feel stiff or kink. The bracelet does wrap around the wrist very well, the articulation is excellent, doesn't pull arm hairs, which is good, and it does feel very comfortable. Feels rather like an oyster style bracelet, or an oyster bracelet on a Submariner Date 16610 on a vintage piece, where the bracelet has wear and it's sloppy. It's got that feeling, but it is very comfortable because it doesn't pull arm hairs, no sharp edges to the flanks, and it articulates freely. So let's look at the clasp in detail. So as I've detailed, solid 316L grade stainless steel clasp, but it's very light gauge. 4 micro adjustment holes are good, but I'd like to see a solid mill body. I'd like to see a longer clasp with micro adjustment, and I think that Invicta could do better at this price point. Flip lock works well. It clicks shut with a nice positive click. Now, the internal is pressed stainless steel. They've done a good job of mirror polishing it. I'm not going to be critical of this. Normally I would be at this price point, €99, because the industry standard is now a solid milled 316L grade stainless steel clasp for the internals. But however, my Submariner Date 16610, which is the last one made in 2010, does use a similar pressed stainless steel clasp. It predates the use of a glide lock clasp, and this is the style of clasp Rolex were using throughout the life span of the 16610, from the early versions to the very last in 2010 that I have. So I'm not going to be overly critical, because the actual quality of it, in terms of build quality, materials and finishing, is not far off the 16610 pressed stainless steel clasp, which is made from 9040 oyster steel. No sharp edges to the flanks, which is good, so it doesn't feel sharp. The centre section has been deburred very well, so it doesn't have sharp corners to it, and the riveted ends of the centre hinge pin are deburred very well. So let's check the hinge pins. Left hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, so that's good, but the negative is it has excess play in every direction, so it rattles. Let's check the centre hinge pin. Again, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, so that's a positive, but it's sloppy. Massive amount of play in every direction, as you can see, and it rattles. Finally, let's check the right hand hinge pin, which is actually a spring bar. Again, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, which is good, but sloppy. Excess play in every direction. Now, cumulative effect is left hand, centre and right hand hinge pins have too much play, and therefore the pressed stainless steel clasp is sloppy. It rattles. My concern is long-term durability. How long is it going to be before the excess shear load on the hinge pins cause the riveted ends on this centre pin to shear, because when you have riveted ends on a pin in an elongated hole which is oversized, the excess shear load exacerbates the wear, and the problem is eventually the rivets wear off and then the pin falls out, or alternatively it just shears due to the excess shear load. Same applies to the spring bar. As you can see, when it's in a sloppy hole like this, there's excess shear load, and eventually what happens is the end of the spring bar shears off and then it fails and the clasp comes undone, piece drops on the ground. Same applies to this riveted pin, which also does the flip lock. Excess play, too much shear load, and eventually it will fail. So long-term durability is the problem. This is why I'm always critical of hinge pins being sloppy, because when you have a hole which is too large and a pin which is undersized, the excess shear load exacerbates the wear and therefore they eventually fail. So it's not just because they make a rattling sound and it's sloppy, it's the long-term durability which I'm concerned about. So that's the bracelet and clasp. So let's look at the case back. Exhibition case back glazed with mineral crystal. Now I'm not going to be critical of it using the cost-cutting measure of mineral crystal versus sapphire crystal, because strictly speaking the front of the piece needs sapphire crystal because that's the area that's prone to being scuffed and scratched with daily wear and tear. The exhibition case back is just rubbing against the wrist, so it's not really prone to being scuffed and scratched as per the front of the piece, and therefore mineral crystal is an acceptable cost-cutting measure. On a positive note, the mineral crystal is flat and smooth, feels comfortable against the wrist. The stainless steel portion is mirror polished to a flawless standard, and it's engraved with the reference number and specification of the piece. The milled slots are deburred and chamfered very well. The exhibition case back does a good job of displaying the movement, which is sterile. Now, early versions of the Pro Diver had a yellow decal which was stuck onto the rotor to decorate it. It was signed with Invicta, but current versions, such as this 2025 version of the Pro Diver, they have deleted the yellow decal, so there's no Invicta branding. It's just the standard sterile movement with a standard Seiko NH35A sterile rotor, and I personally prefer it. I like the silver rotor, and the exhibition caseback does do a good job of displaying it. I disliked the yellow decal which they stuck on it to brand it as if it was an in-house Invicta caliber, and of course it's not. It's an NH35A. I want to give due credit to Invicta for their honesty here, because if you look closely at the caseback, it does actually say Japanese movement assembled in Malaysia, and they've been honest about the origin of where the movement is made. So Seiko produced the NH35A in two plants. They have a plant in Japan and a plant in Malaysia, and they make the NH35A in equal quantities in both the Japanese and Malaysian plants. But Invicta haven't disguised it. They haven't said Japanese movement, and for example on the dial either side of the 6 o'clock index they haven't printed Japan movement, because one could say the NH35A is a Japan movement because it's made by Seiko. But the truth is, some of the movements are made in Malaysia, some are made in Japan. So what they've done is they've been honest and they've said Japanese movement assembled in Malaysia, because this version they're using, which is unbranded with Invicta, doesn't have the yellow decal on the rotor. It is the Malaysian version. Now in terms of quality control, builds quality, materials, finishing and accuracy, there is no difference whatsoever. The Japanese and Malaysian made NH35As are identical quality control. There's no difference. So I don't have any qualms whatsoever about this being the Malaysian version, but they deserve credit for stating Japanese movement assembled in Malaysia. It's the truth. So exhibition caseback is a bubble back caseback. Now the negative of this is the main negative of this piece I want you to be aware of. It's 14.3mm thick. It has a flat sapphire crystal, so therefore it's not caused by the crystal being a box top hat crystal or a double dome sapphire crystal. The thickness of this piece is not down to the head of the piece, the case. It's wholly down to the bubble back caseback being far too deep. The NH35A is a thick movement, and therefore the rotor does need additional clearance, but it doesn't need this amount of clearance. What we've got here is 1.5mm of clearance in between the mineral crystal and the rotor itself, and it doesn't need that amount of clearance. And what they've done is they've made the stainless steel portion of the exhibition caseback far too deep. This is 2mm thicker than it needs to be. So for example, they could reduce the thickness of this by 2mm, and that would reduce the thickness of this piece from 14.3 down to 12.3, which is the sweet spot. Anything below 13mm is the sweet spot for comfort level and feel good factor, and it will easily slip underneath the shirt cuff if you wear business shirts, so therefore it's a practical daily wear piece. 14.3 is too thick, And really it's down to this case back. It's a very deep bubble back case back, and the negative is, as I'll show you in the wrist shot, it makes the head of the piece sit too tall on wrist. It looks like a tall top heavy slab of 316L grade stainless steel. So case back's too deep by 2mm, and there's too much clearance. The sapphire crystal is too far away from the rotor. So they need to reduce the proportions of it, the stainless steel portion of it, by 2mm. That would enhance this piece. The end links are folded, hollow end links as I've detailed, but they are a good snug fit to the head of the piece, which is good. The underside to the head of the piece is finished to perfection. I want to give credit to Invicta here because the mirror polishing to the underside to the head of the piece is excellent. No sharp edges to the undercuts to the flanks. The tips of the four corners to the lugs have been deburred and chamfered very well with bezels, so there are no sharp edges to the underside of the crown guards, the undercuts to the flanks and the four corners of the lugs. Mirror polishing is flawless and it is exceptional at this price point. Right, so let's test the screw down crown execution and the bezel execution. So, solid 316L grade stainless steel crown, coin edge finished, nice large chamfer which deletes the sharp tips to the coin edge teeth. Mirror polished domed cap to it, and it is embossed with the Invicta emblem to a good standard, so quality of the finishing is good. Let's test the execution. Silky smooth. This is sublime screw down crown execution. Invicta deserve credit. It's an example to other low tier brands of how to get screw down crown execution perfected. 200 meters is strong specification, minimal number of turns required to fully unscrew it. Silky smooth. Perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. This is sublime. So when it's fully unscrewed, we're now in the manual wind position, and one can manually wind the Seiko Caliber NH35A automatic to its maximum 41-hour power reserve. You'll know from my previous reviews, the NH35A is one of my personal favourite calibers. I like the feeling of manually winding it because it feels smooth. It doesn't feel rough or gritty. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up. It's got medium firm resistance to it. The meshing of the gearing is good, and one can feel the medium resistance. It's a low friction caliber, and I like the feeling of the tension building up in the mainspring. 40 full clockwise turns is enough to fully wind it to its maximum 41 hours. So for example, when the mainspring is fully unwound, when it's exhausted and the movement has stopped dead, the power is completely exhausted. 40 clockwise turns is enough to fully wind it to its maximum. And it's not possible to overwind the Caliber NH35A because it has a clutch release mechanism. So when the mainspring is fully wound to its maximum 41 hours, excess tension is released by the ratcheting mechanism. So you cannot damage the movement by overwinding it. It is technically excellent. Feels very good. I like it. Pulling it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication. So if you look at the date complication at 3 o'clock, you can see it clicks over with a nice positive click. This is something I particularly like about the NH35A. It's got a real heavy clicking indexing to the date, and it feels more heavy than a Miyota 8215 or a Miyota 9015, which you may be familiar with. Also feels heavier than a Sellita SW200-1, which have a lighter clicking action to the quickset complication. The NH35A has a very heavy clicking indexing. It feels solid, reliable and robust. I really like it. So, works well, alignment is correct, the singles and the doubles align correctly. Pulling it out to the second click position hacks the movement. So if you look at the second hand, you can see it's now stopped dead, and therefore it's possible to set the time precisely to the second with the Caliber NH35A automatic. Nice light resistance to the gearing, has 24 joules, it's a low friction caliber, feels smooth clockwise and anti-clockwise when you cycle through the 12 hours to set the time. Minimal backplay, something I really like about the NH35A. The meshing of the gearing is good, it feels nice and tight. When you rotate the coin edge crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, there's an almost immediate response. The pencil minute hand almost immediately moves. One doesn't have to take up a lot of slack or a lot of backplay as per a Miyota 8215 for example, and that's something I like about the NH35A. The meshing of the gearing feels tight. Some backplay is necessary because if it didn't have some backplay or some slack in the meshing of the gearing, when you push back in the crown, it would cause the pencil minute hand to jump out of position. So there is a mechanical need for there to be some backplay or some play in the gearing, some slack, because that amount of play does prevent the minute hand jumping out of position. As you can see, it remains static once you've set it, so that's good. So it feels good to set the time, nice and smooth, and I like it. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. You can see the second hand begins to sweep around the dial once again. Now the only negative I want you to be aware of, and it's subjective, is the second hand stutters or judders around the dial because it runs at 3 Hz. So to clarify, 3 Hz movements run at 21,600 vibrations per hour, and the characteristic of a 3 Hz movement is the second hand stutters or judders around the dial. For example, it doesn't sweep as smoothly as a 4 Hz sweep. 4 Hz is 28,800 vibrations per hour, which is used by Miyota premium calibers such as the 9015 and 9039 respectively. I do like a 4 Hz smooth sweep rather than the stutter or judder of a 3 Hz sweep, but as I've said, this is subjective. For the majority of collectors, the stutter or judder of a 3 Hz second-hand sweep is not a negative, but I just personally prefer 4 Hz. So let's test screwing the crown back down. Instant thread pickup, perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. I want to give due credit to Invicta here because it is an example to other low tier brands of how to get screw down crown execution perfected. Perfect interface, the pickups of the thread is instant and it feels silky smooth. It really is fantastic. It's a sublime screw down crown execution. To put it into perspective, it's smoother than the Pagani design PD1661, smoother than a steel dive SD1953, which you will be familiar with, and I really like it. The threads mesh very well. They've cut the threading, the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube to perfection. Build quality, quality control, tolerances and machining are 10 out of 10. It's a fantastic screw down crown. I absolutely love it. So let's test the bezel execution. So 120 click unidirectional bezel, as one would expect. Medium resistance to it. So how does it feel? Well, it feels heavier than a Pagani design PD1661 bezel, which is too light. Feels similar to a steel dive SD1953, which has a medium resistance, which I like. It's good. Doesn't feel as heavy as a Seiko 5KX, which you may be familiar with. That has a firmer, heavy bezel execution. Feels even all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation. Doesn't get tighter or looser, which is good. Nice, loud, audible clicks. Feels refined. And it sounds solid. The bezel feels heavy and sounds heavy. It doesn't feel like a light, tinny, thin bezel. So I like the solid sound of it, and I like the loud audible clicks, and it feels smooth. The click spring engages well with the 120 grooves on the underside of the stainless steel bezel. Very smooth. No lateral side-to-side play whatsoever, so it feels nice and tight. No back play whatsoever, so this is excellent. Let's just check the alignment. One more click. Perfect. The Lume pip and triangle perfectly aligned with the 12 o'clock index on the dial and the 60-minute tick on the chapter ring. So this is an example to other low tier brands at the €99 price point of how to get bezel execution perfected. It's outstanding. No lateral side-to-side play, no back play, perfect alignment, even resistance through the 360 degrees rotation. I prefer the bezel execution on this Pro Diver to the Pagani design PD1661, the steel dive SD1953. It's better. The resistance is perfectly balanced. It's not too heavy or too light. It's lighter than a Seiko 5KX, but it's heavier than a steel dive SD1953, which has a good bezel execution. This feels very well balanced. It's refined. I really like it, and Invicta deserve credit because it's an excellent bezel execution. Visually it looks good, feels good, sounds good. They've got it right. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now I haven't sized the bracelet, and I want you to bear in mind I'm on position 3 out of the 4 micro adjustments, so I could even go 1 micro adjustment larger, but as you can see I can easily slide 2 fingers beneath the bracelet and clasp at all times. So this indicates this bracelet is very long. It will fit up to even a 9-inch wrist size. Even on my 8-inch wrist I can fit 2 fingers beneath it, and I'm only on position 3 out of 4. I could go 1 micro adjustment larger. 9-inch wrist size is the maximum. There are enough removable links on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side to size this down to a minimum 6-inch wrist size up to a maximum 9-inch wrist size. So huge amount of adjustment, plenty of links. It's good to see Invicta are catering for collectors with an 8-inch plus wrist size. No problems whatsoever if you have a larger wrist. Now, as I've detailed, this would benefit from a better taper, the Perfection Personified 20-16 taper versus the 20-18 they've used. It does add some meat. There is some heft to this bracelet. I want you to bear in mind it is a very long bracelet, but it's 156 grams with all the links. Now, needless to say, even I would remove 2 links from this bracelet from 8-inch wrist. If you have a 7-inch wrist, you're going to be removing 4 or even 5 links. That will reduce this well below 156 grams to circa 135 to 140. The reason why it's notable is because I always refer to this in my previous reviews. 150 grams and below is the sweet spot for a 40mm head of the piece, because 150 grams and below is comfortable. A piece doesn't feel top heavy, it feels balanced, and therefore it wears comfortably for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day. The thing I like about this piece is the lug to lug. It's 47.8. Now, you'll know from my previous reviews, 48 is the perfect sweet spot, regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7-inch wrist or a 7 to 8-inch wrist, respectively. So at 47.8, it's just 0.2mm below the 48mm perfect sweet spot, and it's very close. 47.8 is very close to 48. And it does look and feel good as a result. The lug to lug is perfect on my 8-inch wrist, very close in proportions to the 16610 Submariner date, which this is an homage to. However, the negative of this piece I want you to be aware of is the bubble back case back, as I've detailed. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus. You can see the gap on the undercuts of the flanks and the gap underneath the tips of the lugs. This is not caused by the thickness of the case. The flanks of the case are not slab-sided, they're correctly proportioned. For example, it doesn't look like a Black Bay Heritage, which has tall slab-sided flanks. This isn't the problem, it's not the case. The flanks are actually correctly proportioned. It's the deep bubble back case back. Now, the problem is it makes the head of the piece sit tall on the wrist. There's a gap underneath it. And as I've detailed, they could have reduced the depth of the case back, the stainless steel portion, by 2mm. That would make the head of the piece sit closer to the wrist by 2mm, because as it stands, it's 14.3. So it's 1.3mm too thick. 13mm and below is the sweet spot, because that will easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. At 14.3, it's 1.3 too thick, and therefore it's going to be slightly more difficult to slip underneath a shirt cuff, and that means it's not really practical for a daily wear piece as a result. They could easily reduce this by 2mm by simply reducing the depth of the stainless steel portion of the exhibition case back by 2. That would reduce this down to only 12.3. If this were 12.3, it would be very low profile, rather like a Rolex Submariner date 16610, which is 12.7. And that's the negative I want you to be aware of. Lug to lug is good. Lug width is good at 20mm, 40mm head of the piece gives nice wrist presence for a 6 to 7-inch wrist and a 7 to 8-inch wrist respectively. So the head of the piece is correctly proportioned. 20mm lug width is correct on a 40mm head of the piece. 47.8 is very close to the perfect 48, but they've just made a mistake with a deep bubble back case back. Taper on the bracelet is okay. It's 20 to 18, but visually it does look aesthetically pleasing. Credit where credit's due. They've done a very good job of mirror polishing the centre links, and the brush satin finishing to the outer links has a beautiful lustre. It does visually look very aesthetically pleasing, and I really like it. Now, subjectively, I would say this would look better with brush satin finished centre links as per the Submariner date 16610, which this is an homage to. However, it's subjective. Some collectors like mirror polished centre links. It does add some interest, and of course it does make it different, being just a direct copy or clone of the 16610. It adds some different design elements to it. I think it would look better with 20 to 16, and I think brush satin finishing will look better, but however, it's a very well finished bracelet, beautiful lustre to it. Clasp is correctly proportioned. It is a light gauge. It does feel too light. I prefer a solid milled body to a micro adjustment clasp, but it's comfortable. No sharp edges to the undercuts to the clasp, which is good on the flanks. Doesn't have any sharp corners, doesn't have any sharp edges, and it does have a beautiful lustre to it. So it's nicely proportioned, and it does curve around the wrist very well. Clasp is correctly proportioned with the curvature of it for a smaller 6 to 7-inch wrist and a larger 7 to 8-inch wrist respectively. So proportions are good. It's not too thick and bulky. It doesn't stick out too proud from the wrist. It curves around it nicely. So, feel-good factor is excellent. Comfort level is excellent. The benefits of the mineral crystal glazing in the exhibition caseback is it does feel very smooth. So, although it does sit tall on the wrist, it actually feels balanced. 156 grams is slightly heavy, but it does have a very long bracelet, and if you remove 4 links from it, that will reduce it below 150 to the sweet spot. Visually, it looks fantastic. I really like the blue sunburst style, and also like the anodized blue aluminium bezel insert, which complements it because it's a royal blue bezel insert and an electric blue to royal blue sunburst style. It's just a visually great looking piece. I love the blue tone of it. Legibility is good despite the lack of AR coating, and of course the 1.5 times magnification versus 2.5. The only negative really is the deep Rehauts. It's too deep. I'd like to see shallower Rehauts used as per the Sugess Submariner data marge, because they've got it correct and it uses the NH35A, so it is possible. The Rehaut does look too deep, but other than that, it's a great looking piece. The scalloped bezel is nicely finished, and I like the mirror polish finishing to it versus brushed satin finishing. So feel good factor is good, comfort level is good, and it does feel balanced. It doesn't feel top heavy, it just visually looks top heavy because of the deep case back. So there is room for improvement, but I like the comfort level, I like the feel good factor. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it's disappointing. This is one negative of the watch I want you to be aware of. We use green Luminova on this piece, or Invicta use it. Now, there is a good colour tone match. The green tone of the Lume pip on the aluminium bezel insert, the applied indices, and also the Mercedes handset are the same green. But now you can see the exciter lacks potency. It's fading very quickly on the Lume pip, very quickly on the indices. The hands are holding performance better. So clearly we're looking at 3 to 4 layers of C3 Luminova, not Super Luminova, on the Mercedes handset, but only 2 to 3 layers on the Lume pip and 2 to 3 layers on the indices on the dial. So I'm just going to charge it up once again because it's fading so quickly. The exciter lacks such potency that the camera is struggling to autofocus on it. So I'll charge it up once again to its absolute maximum, and you can see how quickly the exciter fades. Right, so that's now fully charged, and you can see initially the exciter looks potent on the Lume pip and the Mercedes handset, but the indices are fading very quickly. This is the negative of using nipple indices versus maxi dial indices, because they don't allow for a lot of depth for 5 to 6 layers of C3 to be applied. Now, the other thing is they should be using Super Luminova at this price point of €99. To put this into perspective, this is as disappointing as a Pagani design PD1661 at the €80 price point. This is €99. So Steel Dive on the SD1953 are capable of doing it at only €80 price point. They use BGW9 on a fully Lume ceramic bezel insert, BGW9 on the indices, and BGW9 on the Mercedes handset. 5 to 6 layers, which is the industry standard for good reason. It's optimum. So they're capable of doing it at the €80 price point. There's no excuse for Invicta not doing it at the €99 retail price point. This should be using either C3 or BGW9 Super Luminova. It should be using 5 to 6 layers on the Lume pip, 5 to 6 on the dial, 5 to 6 on the Mercedes handset. Because as you can see, clearly we're looking at 3 to 4 layers on the Mercedes handset and 2 to 3 layers on the Lume pip, 2 to 3 layers on the applied indices. And you can see the negative of it. It's fading quickly to nothing, and of course it's Luminova. It's not Super Luminova, so it lacks the potency of the exciter. They really need to upgrade this in 2025. It's not acceptable. This is a main negative. You can see negligible performance. The Mercedes hands are now dimming as well, so it's very poor quality. Right, so let's discuss the movement use because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. You'll all be familiar with this Seiko NH35A. It's one of my personal favourites. So the Calibre NH35A is made in 2 plants by Seiko, as I've detailed, Japan and Malaysia respectively. There's no difference between the two. Invicta are using the Malaysian version, and they've been honest about that, as I've detailed. They've engraved it into the case back, Japan movement assembled in Malaysia, so they've been honest. But there's no discernible difference. They're both equal quality control, build quality, machining tolerances and accuracy. So it's been in service since 2011. At this stage in 2025, it's a reliable, well-proven workhorse calibre. Has 24 joules. It runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. The negative of it running at 3 Hz, subjectively, as I've detailed, is the stutter or judder of the second hand. I prefer the smoother sweep of a 4 Hz sweep, but it's reliable. Now, hand winding and hacking works well. Quick set date complication works well, as I've demonstrated. The stated accuracy is -20 to +40 seconds per day, so rather wide accuracy range. However, I'm pleased to report that Invicta are doing a good job of regulating the NH35As they're using, which are made in Malaysia. This one is running consistently at plus 6 seconds per day, which is actually chronometer grade accuracy of -4 to +6. +6 is well within the stated accuracy of -20 to +40, and it is excellent for an NH35A. 41-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable. So the only negative I want you to be aware of is the stutter or judder of the second hand. Other than that, it's an excellent movement. Above all else, what I like about it is it feels good to manually wind. It feels smooth. It doesn't feel rough or gritty, and I like the feeling of it. The hacking works well, setting the time works well, quick set date complication works well. It's reliable, it's well proven, it's robust. So it is the correct choice of movement for this price point at €99. One isn't going to see a premium grade of Miyota caliber such as the 9015 at the €99 price point. One has to be realistic. The NH35A is a good movement. It's solid, it's reliable, and it's also accurate when it's well regulated. +6 is excellent. So Invicta deserve credit for well regulating the movements they're using. So last I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meets 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So low tier piece, price point is €99. I'm going to declare it excellent quality, and I'm going to declare it good value at €99. Now, I'm not going to say it's excellent quality and excellent value, because at €99 this does face some stiff competition. For example, the Steel Dive SD1953 is €80, but it has better performance. Super Lume Nova, it uses BGW9 on a fully lumed ceramic bezel insert. The dial and hands also have 5 to 6 layers, so it's better. The other thing is it has a ceramic bezel insert, and also one could say it's better because the quality of the bracelet on the SD1953 is better, the quality of the clasp is better, has more micro adjustments, has a heavier gauge, and also the internals are solid milled 316L grade stainless steel. It's not pressed stainless steel. So the SD1953 is €80. That's what this is going head to head with. One could say it's better than the Pagani design PD1661, but this is subjective because they both have poor quality lume. They both use the same NH35A. The bracelet on the PD1661 is better because it uses screw pins, and of course it's not as sloppy, and it has solid end links and also a solid milled clasp rather than this pressed stainless steel clasp. So one could say it's equal quality to a PD1661. I would say the SD1953 has the edge over it simply because it uses sapphire crystal with AR coating and also BGW9, so it's better performance. But as a 16610 homage with a classic Submariner date style case, this is excellent. I like the blue tone of the bezel insert and the blue sunburst style. The feel-good factor and the comfort level of this piece is excellent, and I really like it. I like this watch so much, I have decided to add it to my own personal collection, and that really is the highest compliment I can pay a watch. So I'm going to declare it excellent quality and good value. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Invicta Pro Diver 9094 OB. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.